All right, so welcome everyone to this episode of the CollegeTracks Spotlight. My name is Priscille, and we bring you a new episode every single month, always with a special guest, alumni from the CollegeTracks Access and Success Program. And today I am joined by Anupam Ghosh. Anupam grew up in the Silver Spring area, and he was also a CollegeTracks Access and Success alumni. He studied at the University of Maryland and graduated with a BS in computer science. And currently, he serves as a CollegeTracks alum board member and works as a software engineer at Great Minds. Anupam, how are you? Welcome.
Good. I'm good. How are you? I'm honored to be here.
I'm honored. Thank you so much
Uh,
for coming on today.
yeah.
So before I want to get started with this, when I was actually like doing your like the pre-work for this, I felt like your name was pretty cool. So Anupam, like, does it have a meaning to your name? Is there a meaning to your name?
Oh, yeah. It's funny. Yeah, actually, mom's told me. I think she's trying to make it like relatable, but she said it was closely related to kind of like He-Man, like kind of like he's like the man, like he's kind of like the person that kind of like brings everyone together type of guy. Like he's like kind of I don't know if it's like the leader or something, but it's something about just like he is like that guy, so that type of thing. I'll see if I can get an official definition from my mom soon for you later. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like whenever our parents tell us of our name, we just kind of like latch onto it and
Yeah.
never question it.
I was just like, He-Man, I'll take it. Power
Exactly.
of Grayskull, right?
See, there you go. So a little bit about your background. You mentioned that you grew up in the Silver Spring area,
Yeah.
which is close to like the College Park. But what high school did you attend? Did you also attend high school in that area as well?
Yeah. So I actually attended Bethesda Chevy Chase High School.
So you went to BCC, and that's actually like it's actually really cool because that's like where the first college
Yeah.
school was.
Yeah.
So that's actually really awesome. But as we're like now for this school year, getting into the 20th anniversary of College Tracks.
Yeah.
So for the time that you were there at BCC, how have you seen College Tracks change or adapt over the years?
It's funny. I mean, when we were there, I it's I so being a board member, I think we've seen a lot of things change. A
Mhm.
lot of it, I mean, they've expanded, right? I think now we're in like 5 or 6 high schools now, and
Right,
looking
yeah.
to be in 10 high schools, like in like the next 5 or 6 years.
Mhm.
Um, I think a lot of things have changed in terms of like organization. I think there's a lot more experience, a lot more kind of not saying they didn't have that before, but there's so many more people that there's so much more like herd experience on how to get kids into the correct path, right?
Mhm.
And right now we're also exploring different, a little bit. We're exploring more paths that I think we did before. I think before when I was there, it was very just kind of like, hey, like you're trying to get into college, and this is what we're here for. Now I think we were having discussions about more about, okay, like maybe college isn't the correct thing for you, but maybe like a
Yeah,
trade school or maybe some type of work slash something. So we're exploring kind of, okay, how can we get into careers early
yeah.
and all those types of things. And then a lot of that has to do with, I think, society. I think a lot of people, the generation after me, with like Gen Z, getting a lot of pressure of like, well, college might not be right. And maybe I just need to go start working, or maybe I got to do something else, right?
Mhm.
And I'm glad to see that even though college tracks is in the name, college, but it looks like we're not just fulfilling the need for college, but also just the needs for people to do post high school. You know,
Yeah.
so that's changed a lot. There's a lot more organization. I think we're up actually, and also because of the pandemic, I've noticed I think we've gone a little bit more digital, a little bit more remote. So talking to kids more through email, text, Zoom. I know it's been hard, at least for the college success program, to like schedule people on in campus and stuff all the time. So doing things over Zoom, I think, a little bit more open because of kind of the result of coronavirus and all that. So
Mhm.
which is great. Which is great. I think people need support in many different ways. And I think College Tracks is doing a really good job of doing that. Just
Yeah.
giving that support. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really amazing. It sounds like too, like apart from what you said, like we're also able to adapt, right?
Yeah,
Like,
of course.
adapt to like not only our students, but also the medium and where we communicate.
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned something really important too, like when you mentioned that like right now, over the past years too, like people have been looking at alternatives
Yeah.
besides college, right? So that can be even like going to a boot camp and just getting a certificate specifically for people who work in IT.
Yeah.
But for us to also like be able to like still be there and support them through their career is also great that we're doing. So I love hearing that as well. I also wanted to hear like you also from a different mindset because like we mentioned too, like you're on the board for College Track, but before you were also one of the students that they're serving. So
Yeah.
it's kind of cool to see like the different, like kind of see like how everything works in the background. So like for you, like what experiences have you been able to bring to the board being one of the students that they've served?
Oh, I think the big one was just kind of solidifying to the board like what was important during my experience, right?
Mhm.
The big one really was, I think being the big actually during this whole conversation we had about kind of how do we expand college tracks and stuff was we trying to make sure we were still kind of core to the mission, right?
Yeah,
And core of not just the mission, but kind of how we serve that mission,
yeah,
which is still being at the school in person and ensuring that that is like one big aspect of like that's what really drives the success, right? I think for me, what was really important as a part of my college track journey, at least from the access side,
yeah,
was hey, being able to stay after school at the career center and having those volunteers there to like pretty much handhold me and
yeah,
listen through all the complaints that I had, but still help me apply
yeah,
for all the SAT, ACT testing and all the especially also really important was I think the scholarships and all the
yeah,
grants and all the paperwork, right?
yeah,
As a high school student, you're not trying to spend your afternoons doing that stuff, especially your senior, right? Or junior. You're not trying to spend your afternoons doing that, but they're there to help you finish it, to help you proofread. Like, I didn't realize applying to college would require so much writing,
yeah,
and me personally, I suck at writing. I can speak to you just fine, but writing, I'm not. I know the English language is it's a bit of
yeah.
a pain, right? So I think since they were there and forcing you to do that was very important.
Mhm.
Now, the whole question about what I mentioned before, does it have to be in person or can we do it over Zoom or whatever? I mean, we're still exploring those things,
Yeah.
but the in-person thing was very important, right? Someone was there. It's kind of like essentially the way I think about it is College Tracks is serving duties that you're as a first generation American that your parents might not have been able to do, right? Your
Yeah.
parents would probably usually be sitting next to you making you do these things, but College Tracks is there to fulfill that need, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's still very important and very core to our mission and to success.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really glad that like in the board, like there's like a voice that they don't usually have the opportunity to see and talk to every day.
Yeah,
And I think that that's really important too, because I remember for me specifically, like I always say, like I wish I was in college tracks, like when I was in high school.
yeah.
But I know that's coming along later on to like every single high school in Montgomery County. But there was something like a little bit similar. It was called like Liberty's Promise. And in high school, I was in the program, but then after I graduated from high school, a few years later, I actually got to work there. So serving the students. So it
Wow.
was like, it was always good not seeing it from the other side. Not only like just for us as board members or employees thinking, what do students need? But if you're actually in it, you see firsthand what they need and how the organization can serve you and better continue to serve you in the way that it does.
Yeah.
So it's really important to have that. So as you mentioned before, also like you are now you were a computer science major in College
Yeah.
Park. And now you work as a software engineer. Is that always a track that you had from the first like year in college, or did that change over the years?
It's funny, man. I think yeah, before I got to college, I was always the computer guy.
Yeah.
I think ever since I got a computer, which is probably back in like mom, somehow scrounged up money to buy us a computer back in like middle school. And I've always been that like, a computer guy. Like I'm the
Yeah.
family computer man. Like I knew I was always tinkering and stuff. In terms of, I got to college and figuring out what to do with that kind of passion, I had no idea. And
Mm,
it's funny because I think during the college like access uh, process, like I was applying, I applied for different schools. I did like engineering school in one place. I
yeah.
did computer science in multiple places. And when I landed in UMD, I was doing computer science. And I was like, okay, well, computer science is cool. It's programming and stuff.
Yeah.
I still had a passion to maybe work on maybe hardware or something, which is more of the engineering side. But then during my first year, during the first few classes of computer science, we were like learning. I don't know if they're doing this now, but back then they had us learn like Java. And the Java language now is kind of like whatever, but
Mm.
back then I was like, okay, we're programming stuff and like typing this stuff in, and like we're solving like interesting, like kind of like they're mostly like puzzles where you're interested, interesting like problems. And I was like, oh, this is like for me. This is like solving problems by like putting it into the computer and like seeing the output. That for me was very like awesome. It was awesome. It was awesome. It just to me just kind of just felt right.
Okay.
So it was very straightforward for me. I just kind of just got very lucky and was like, yeah, I like it. Cool. I'm gonna stick with it. And but it didn't. And not everything came easy. As people
Mhm.
know, the first few classes were sure, yeah, pretty easy, and all that. But yeah, I just liked it.
Okay.
And then being a software engineer just kind of just came with it. But yeah, that's the big one.
So
Yeah.
that's really good. So like you're like one of those people who have like haven't gone through like your midlife crisis in college where it's like I don't know what to do, like what area should I do? What should I do
Yeah,
for my job? But it's like from early on, you already kind of had like that foundation like for working with computers and now it just like
yeah,
translated into what you do right now.
yeah,
So also like with kind of just like elaborating specifically on this major and this field,
yeah.
for people who don't really understand like what computer science entails of, right?
Yeah.
So where are some of the skills you need to have to be able to work in this field? And then also what are some of the things you can do besides like being a software engineer?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay, so in terms of skills and like I think this is a couple things, right? I think there's one thing to like succeed in the computer science like degree,
Yeah.
but then also like kind of like what are some of the career paths after that, right?
Mhm.
For the degree, to really to finish college and stuff, I would say the biggest skill you need is, you know, you got to be able to solve problems.
Okay.
I mean, look, every field needs to solve problems,
Yeah.
has problem solving. The thing about computer science is that you are using computers and how computers think to solve problems in specific ways. And there's ways to solve problems. You can solve the same problem in different ways, but you got to like be able to essentially you're translating kind of like the logic from your brain
Yeah.
into like the syntax into the computer and using that to solve a specific problem, right? Like for example, you have a like a, say you have like a word file. So you have like a word file of a bunch of names and you want to capitalize everything, right? Like how do you logically think of, okay, well, I gotta read each line and then I need to like take each character and map it to the capital character. So you gotta kind of be able to break down problems, and so it's all of this. So everything related to problem solving, breaking down problems, putting them back together.
Mhm.
That's the big one. The other big one, and this is probably true for every degree,
Yeah.
honestly, is I think persistence and perseverance. Right, you got to stick with it. I mean, if you really hate it, then leave. Right, but when things get hard, you can't just give up. It's
Yeah.
going to be hard. There are things that your brain is not going to be able to comprehend the first day or the second day. It might even take 10 days. Right,
Yeah.
you're going to be given a project that you are expected to do within 2 months, and it's probably like pretty big, and you're like, oh, this is crazy, right?
Yeah.
Maybe not 2 months, maybe in a month, but you got to stick with it. You got to stick with it. You got to keep trying. And one thing about computer science too, it takes a lot of time, right? And college degrees also include things outside of your major. You got the
Yeah.
electives, you got the core, and all that type of stuff. So I guess another skill would be also time management. You gotta like manage your time. You gotta figure out, you gotta give yourself some quiet hours, but then you gotta give yourself time to recharge, maybe hang out
Yeah.
with friends. So it's those. So really, the key three things, right, is or four things, right, is you need to be able to problem solve and break down problems really well.
Mhm.
Persistence, perseverance, and those things are really important. And then I think your second part, what kind of like careers
Yeah.
and skills can you do afterwards? I think if you do graduate with a degree of computer science, you have a great basis on how to use technology to solve real world problems, right?
Mm.
You don't necessarily need to be a software engineer to do that. Software engineering is usually the track people would go. So you
Yeah.
like, you join a company as a software engineer, and you probably are part of right now the big thing is agile. So you join like a team of 5 to 10 people, and you grab stories from the board and you contribute to a code base, and
Yeah.
you solve the problem that way, right? But there's also a lot of job families outside of that that could also use the computer science degree. There's at some point a lot of people kind of they kind of move, I guess, like laterally
Okay.
to become like project managers or product owners. So instead of like coding, they're actually working on the overall, like, this is the product I want to build for customers, or this is how I want to. And there's also project managers, which is okay. You go, here's the product, people trying to build the product. Here are the engineers actually building the product,
Yeah.
and the project managers are trying to keep everything kind of like in sync, right? You're trying to make sure the communication is there, make sure everyone has what they need.
Mhm.
Um, and then there's also stuff outside. And then look, I think also with it, and then you can start, if you do have a good basis on technology
Yeah.
and all that, you can also jump to something even more creative. This is what I've also noticed too.
Mhm.
Is some people kind of take their software engineering knowledge, but then they've probably always been an artist, or they've always
Yeah.
like, like graphics or something, right? So then they jump and become like UX and UI designers and implementers. So they actually go and figure out, okay, well, as a human, how are they interacting with our product? How are they interacting with our website? How are they interacting with our app, right? And they try to design ways and try to understand the customer journey. So
Mhm.
that's also a jump that people can do. So honestly, I think with the comp sci degree, a lot of it's just, if you, yeah, a lot of it's just the track you want to choose is kind of up to your imagination,
Mm.
because it opens the door for a lot of things. I think as soon as you have that base layer, and this is kind of what college is really for.
Yeah.
But I think for computer science, if you want to be in technology, that is a really good kind of bedrock, and then you can jump to anywhere you want within technology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good explanation too. And like I know like it's gonna clarify a lot of things for different people, but especially for me too, like because when I think about like computer science or like tech overall,
Yeah.
like for me it's like okay, you have to learn how to code, you have to learn how to learn like all these new languages like Java, like all these different stuff. But as you mentioned too, it's like you can go to different sectors, like you can go to product manager and product owner. And so it's like now like people are starting to learn, or even like there are more opportunities out there to integrate like your own personality, your own strength, and then
Yeah.
also complement it in tech. So able
Yeah.
to work together, which is really cool too, especially with like our society, like a lot of things are turning to tech. So it's like there's
Yeah.
also a lot of demand for people to have those skills. But also too, it's like not everyone's just limited to just like coding, and that's what they think that's all there is. So I think that's a good thing that you
No,
clarified that.
yeah, I think it's a big misconception. Coding is just one part of the job, and it's not even actually, to a degree. As you move up, it becomes a smaller part of the job too.
Really?
A lot of it is really just understanding the problem, breaking down the problem, helping. How do we get this team of people to solve this? Not to solve, but to either, yeah, solve
Yeah.
or build the product. As me being as a little bit more senior now, like
Mhm.
actually I'm leading my own team. I don't actually do a lot of coding myself, but I do, like, I do a lot of code review, but
Okay.
I do read a lot of code still, but I do some coding and stuff on the side. But
Mhm.
during my day job, a lot of it is also just trying to help manage the work, manage people's expectations. Because at the end of the day, what's funny, I think what people don't, I think as you work, you realize, well, no one tells you this, and maybe this is a secret I shouldn't be telling, but at the end of the day, you're working with people, right?
Mhm.
So you got to understand how to work with people, how to build those relationships. The work will always be there. There's always something to do, but is like, are we doing it correctly? Are people happy? Are people, are they motivated? Like these are all things that you kind of start dealing with,
Yeah.
right? And you deal them in a, maybe in a micro kind of thing, maybe with just within yourself or within the team,
Mhm.
or now you're like, okay, how does my team interact with that team, because that team is a dependency or we are a dependency, so how do we,
Yeah.
how do we, manage that? So a lot of it's just, just people stuff. It ends up being people stuff, and coding becomes a tool or just an aspect of what we're doing to solve either a problem or we're trying to build something, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I actually want to elaborate on what you said too. When you mentioned like, are people happy? Like, how do you motivate a team?
Yeah.
There are many different areas where you work with teams, but for you specifically, like with your job and with your team, how do you motivate your team if you've seen that certain team members are not as motivated anymore, or they're not motivated yet? But like, what are some of the ways that you manage to do that?
It's funny, I don't know if I've done that too much myself, but a lot of it I think comes down to really just having the conversation,
Yeah.
right? Is really just, you know, me being like, I don't play a lot of games. I'm a very authentic person. What you see is what you get.
Yeah.
So I just try to ask, man, hey, what's going on? And a lot of times, a lot of people, if they're not motivated, it might be something external. Something's happening at home, or they've been, there might be signs of burnout, things like that,
Yeah.
right? So what we need to do is I do need to ask the individual, and we might have to ask multiple individuals, right?
Yeah.
But there might be a common issue, right? There could be maybe some type of maybe the workload's too much, so we got to figure out how to fix that, right? Or maybe there's some type of other weird, I don't know. I mean, the word toxic always comes up, so maybe there's some weird like toxicity going on, within the team or inner team or between
Yeah.
the teams. So we got to figure out how to fix that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think, but to solve it, to help solve the individual, I mean, it's hard to. It is a hard thing to solve. I think for me, it's really just like trying to figure out what they want to do, trying to figure out what they want to do and how they want to contribute, right? Some people get demotivated because they don't want to work on the current project, or they don't like the current problems, or they don't feel like their voice is being heard.
Yeah.
So try to solve those things, right? It's actually in software engineering, we have this. I was mentioning before, we have Agile.
Yeah.
Agile is a system where everyone is expected, but also what's the word? Not just expected, but also kind of given more. Oh my! I can't believe I forgot the word. But people should be able to. People have the people are able to give their opinions without having without being like reprimanded, or without being like looked down upon, right?
Yeah.
Everyone has everyone has the right to kind of like, hey, question like what the work is or how they want to contribute. And actually in Agile, everyone has a role, like just real quickly, like product owner, developer, scrum master, things like that, and everyone has the role to play.
Yeah.
And everyone asks and demands different questions, right? So the product owner is the one that's like asking for what product to build, but then the developers are in charge of how it's built and things like that. So as long as that's the word, empower. So everyone's empowered to contribute to the overall kind of problem or project, right? And so we try to use so things like using that system can also help, making sure. So also making sure that the underlying system that people are a part of can also, if that system is broken, then people will be demotivated too, right?
Yeah.
So try and ensure that system is still working, or that structure is still working. And then sometimes there's also hard questions, man. I think some people are demotivated because they've been in the same role for so long, but they have no idea how to move out.
Yeah.
Maybe the question for them is like, hey, do you need a change? I mean, maybe that change is also like maybe change jobs, maybe find a new company. Like it's so many different reasons. So I think the big one is really just kind of just finding a way to talk about it and see if there's any common problems among multiple people. Let's try to make sure that the environment they're a part of is empowering and motivating. And if those things are all good, then for the individual, then yeah, just having that conversation and seeing if like there's something personal that they can change, or something that maybe personally that I can change. Me, if I was a manager, like, do I need to change my managing style, or is there another manager the person might be a better fit for, right? Yeah, maybe that's. Did that help?
It did. I think like the overall theme that I'm seeing, or like I heard, is like communication.
Yeah,
Which
number one.
I think honestly, like communication, it's seen as like a soft skill. Especially like working like in technical career, it's kind of
Right.
like, oh, like that's not really like what I need to like hone my skills in. It's like I need to focus more on the technical side. But honestly, it's like if that wasn't in place, like if you're not asking the whys, the hows to your members, not just you, but just like in general,
Right.
you don't really get to the root of the problem. So I think also it's like whatever field or sector you're in, like communication honestly like plays a big role.
Huge role. Communication is honestly the whole soft hard skill thing it's kind of maybe a bad connotation, but communication is a huge thing. You got to know how to talk to people. Not just know, but you got to be willing to. You got to jump on conversations, or be. You sometimes might have to get out of your comfort zone and talk. Ask your manager some hard questions. And stand your ground. Things like that. it's hard though. I mean, I know that a lot of people have different personalities and things like that.
Mhm.
But we have to communicate. We have to know what's going on. I mean, a lot of people are good with understanding body language and all that type of stuff,
Yeah.
the non-spoken stuff. But
Yeah.
you got people like me that are oblivious to everything. You gotta just tell me what's going on because I don't know, So
No,
yeah.
I get that. I get that. So right now, because like I feel like you've had like an extensive experience like in college, in the workplace. It's like usually like when you're in college or even in high school too, like you think the real world, quote unquote, the real world. I don't like using that term because even when you're in high school, you're living the real world. So I don't know,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
I'm in the fake world. So I don't know. I'll just say post-educational life. But sometimes like when we go out there, like we're in college or high school, we think that like um, the working world is going to be something different than we expected.
yeah.
And then you actually get there, you're like, what the heck? Like, no one ever told me. But with your own specific like journey and experience, like what are some of the things that like you've learned that like you'd want people or students in college or high school to be able to already develop or know beforehand?
Oh, like before they start their first job, or no, before they get to college.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the whole real world thing because as soon as you do like start your first job, you realize that everyone's just a kid with big boy or big girl pants on, right? Everyone's just kind of just winging it, right?
Uh,
Um, I think the big one, you know, this is for like before you kind of start your career or like as you try to find your career.
yeah.
A lot of it is, I mean, there's so many things we didn't learn, man. I think I learned so much in the first 6 months of working than I did probably the 4 years of college. I learned a lot in college. Not saying that I didn't learn anything.
Yeah.
I learned a lot, but there's so many things about the real world or about just the world
Yeah.
and about me personally that I learned in the first 6 months of working. Because when you start working, a lot of people need to. I think a lot of people need to know is after that everything is your choice. Everything like there isn't a track. Like when you get to college, there is a track. Like to get this degree, you gotta take these, what is it like? And you gotta take these like 20 or 40 classes, right?
Yeah.
But when you get to your career, the path to getting a promotion, the path to buying a home, the path to being, fiscally or financially independent, all these paths are open to you now, right?
Yeah.
And there's no straight road. There's no like, you can't just like Google and be like, how do I get promoted in this company in this amount of time? That is not gonna show up on Google, right? Like you can't just do that. And you gotta navigate. You gotta navigate through whatever systems and figure that out, right? Um, Another big one when we first started working was how do I deal with my finances? What the hell is a 401k? What is an IRA? What is a Roth IRA? Why do I care about post tax or pre tax? Like,
Right.
what is all this? Oh, how do I buy stocks and Vanguard versus E Trade? Like, there's
Yeah.
all these. So, and that's where I think Google helps for sure. But I think, yeah, just I think people just need to know like all these things are open to you, and you do need to sit down and kind of diligently figure out what you want to do. What are your personal goals? Even just work goals are a little bit more straightforward, right?
Yeah.
They might be unrealistic. I met a lot of people at my job. They're like, I'm gonna get promoted in 6 months. And I was like, bro, you just started, and you're kind of crazy, but okay. Hey, man, if you want to do it, right? But like, but those things you can figure out because you can then talk to your manager and see what's realistic or what's not, right? Um, but your personal life, right? How do you deal with your finances? Like my question. So actually, when I started my career, the one big thing I had was like, I gotta buy a single family home because I want me, my brother, and my mom. I want all of us to live together.
Yeah.
I don't know for how long, but like at least we have a home. We're not like living in an apartment and dealing with rent money.
Yeah.
We can build a home and we have yard space, and which then gave me an opportunity to get a dog and all that. Now, though, I didn't have all those goals, but it's just like I just knew, okay, I need to buy a home.
Mm-hmm.
How do I do that? Right? How do I make sure my finances are set up properly?
Yeah.
Well, one big example is okay, when you get to your first job, they're going to ask you, okay, well, you got to fill out your W-4, You got to figure out how much you want to contribute to your 401k if your job offers these things, right? Well, then to figure out how much you want to, to figure out how much you want to contribute to your 401k, you got to figure out how much you're going to get per paycheck and how much you want to sacrifice per paycheck, because you want to figure out how much cash you want to have on hand for your current lifestyle, but also for your future purchases, down payment for a home, for example, right? So, but there's no easy way to know that, but the thing is, I had to come up with a goal. Like, okay, well, I need, and then I got to do some more research. Right? I said, well, I need a single family home that has at least 2 or 3 bedrooms. Well, okay, around that time, that could range from, a $300,000 condo to like a $500,000 home. So then you got to figure out, okay, this is the size of home I want to buy. Okay, I want to buy a home that's around 400K. So I need around, now I need around 80, if I want to do 20%, I need around 80K in down payment. But if I do 40, like there's all these questions. You want to do 20%, 5%, 3%. Oh, what's your credit score? How eligible are you for a house loan? So there's all these things. But I think, the one important thing is to really just have like an overall goal and then figure out everything in between. And then you'll figure out all the small goals. Okay, well, how do I save up this much money? Or how do I save up for retirement? Or how do I have this much money by this time? And so that's the big one. So I think in college, I think it gives you a little bit of a, I was saying earlier, time management, right? I think in college you kind of learn a little bit. You learn time management, but you learn a little bit of life management, right? But I think when you step out into the real world, you start learning like, damn, now I gotta manage my life. I gotta manage. You can manage my life. I want a new car. How do I get a new car? Right? What kind of car can I afford? Can I get a Benz? Can I get a Lexus? Or should I just go aim and get like a Camry or like a Corolla or a Civic, right? So like, these are all good choices, but it's about what you want and how you want to get there.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what people need to understand is everything is open to you after you really do, get your first job and you step out of college. It's just you got to figure out how to navigate it.
Yeah.
If you have friends, and then another thing, I got blessed too with a lot of friends that were a little bit older than me when I started. When I started my job, I found this one guy.
Yeah.
I won't mention his name, because I don't know. He's a cool dude, but he was like this finance guru, and he was like, hey, all right, you want to figure out your finances? Here's all the Reddit posts. Here's like the beginner guide. Here's everything you need to know to like make your decisions. I was like, oh, awesome. So I do the same thing for other people now. I'm like, hey, you want to figure out what you want to do? Like, read these things.
Yeah.
Right. There's so many resources online now. I mean, Reddit is like there's so many communities on like Reddit and Instagram and things like that. There's just so much to do. Google is great too.
Yep.
And that's another thing. In college, they kind of set you up on how to research these things on your own, right? But the setting the goal part is hard because no one knows what they want to do after all this. You get a paycheck of like $3,000 or $4,000 a month or a paycheck, and you're like, dope, like what do I do with this now?
Exactly.
A lot of people go and spend it, but then there's other things you can do. I mean, spending is fine too, but like I'm not a big saver. I love to spend money, right? But it's just like you gotta be, just gotta be disciplined on what you spend on. Right?
Yeah, those are all like really good like outlines to follow, and I'm gonna make sure our viewers get to hear this because they need to know all this.
Awesome.
So that'll be really good to hear that. And
cool.
So I'm gonna kind of put you like on like a little timer frame. It's kind of a quick hot seat.
Yeah, I like babble like half the time.
No, it's good. It's good. Okay. But in 30 seconds, like explain to me or tell me like or the viewers, everyone, like what is one thing that you're grateful for? 30 seconds.
One thing. I think my family, man. My family and the people around my family, friends, just the people around me. I think I'm grateful for. I think it really does take a village to get to be successful. I've noticed that doing everything yourself is really hard.
Yeah. So
I'm grateful that my family stuck with me and deal with my nonsense. But we've been able to build a home. We have a dog, and I didn't even drive until a couple of years ago. So now we have a couple of cars and stuff. Right. So, but without my family, I couldn't have done that stuff. My mom and dad are cooking all the time, so I always have food in the house. I don't gotta deal with cooking my stuff, and and I still do laundry, but my mom helps me fold it because sometimes I don't have time. All those small things, they count. I think they count, and they really do help. right now, working from home, mom makes me breakfast every day, right? Which
Oh,
I'm spoiled, honestly. I'm
you're
spoiled.
blessed.
I am so spoiled. But like without that stuff, I couldn't like focus in my meetings and
Yeah.
like accomplish. I actually in my job I accomplished a lot in the last year. Not just me, but me and my team. And without the support of my mom and dad and my brother also does a lot of work around the house. He walks the dog, me and him cut the lawn and all that stuff. But without all that support, I wouldn't have been able to succeed in my career, but then also succeed in outside of my career. Right?
Yeah. That's
So
beautiful. It really is like all this small stuff. Like you don't even think about
exactly.
it, but it all adds up to like how successful you are too. It's like that back
Yeah.
support that you have. But to just
Yeah.
to close it off, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on today.
Of course.
You kind of served like as like a mentor to everyone. It was
No.
really great, like hearing your experiences, your journey. Also like explaining like, kind of taking away the stereotype of like what your specific field does, but like for people to have now more information, what they could do in that sector that you work in, as well as all the what should I know before the real world kind of stuff. So just want to say thank you for coming on today.
Yeah, of course. It was great. I'm honored to be able to be here. It was great talking to you. Yeah, it was awesome. It was fun.